Folks, welcome to the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus Show. Live, folks. We're ready to get started. We've got a great guest today. We've got our co-host back online, Erin Porche. I think I see her in the back hanging out a little bit. This is my favorite part. Don't let them fool you. Oh, no. Don't let them try to school you. Welcome back, folks. Yes, you got business to do. Welcome back to the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus Show. Live. We've got Erin Porche back on Louisiana Democratic Small Business Caucus interim chair. Erin, it is so good to see you again. It's been a minute. Are you looking well? Things are going well for you, right?
Amazing. Things are going amazing.
Okay.
Yes, indeed.
I hope we are streaming to all the sites now. We're all fixed and ready to go.
Yes, we are.
I feel so much better about that. I feel so much better about it. It's good having you back too. You know, we've got fantastic local supervisor as a guest today, so it's going to be kind of interesting. I haven't spoken to any local folks in a minute, so this should be an interesting talk with I won't say his name yet. I still want to keep some mystery for people who didn't see him on screen at first, but we're going to get ready to get started. And you know what, Erin, first but foremost, we're always starting off the same. I know everybody has their shots. Don't tell me. All I want to know is you're safe. You're doing all you need to do to keep you and yours safe. And that's really what's important. And that's what I try to tell folks. Do the right thing. Keep yourself safe. Excuse me, it's a live show. I need to make sure my technology is not interrupting the show. I'm back. But you know what? I know you all are doing that. You know, we've got a couple of things that are going on with COVID yet. It's not quite over, but things seem to be getting a little better. What do you think, Erin? Where do you think we're at in this whole thing with the COVID right now? You think things are better? I think they're better.
I think things are better. I think, at this stage, it's all about self-management, right? And really getting back to what we consider normacy, whatever that looks like for us. People are out, people are outside. I see some people still with masks. I see people without, so it's like, do what works for you. But at the end of the day, continue to live, continue to show up and get to what you consider normal for your life. I'm excited. It's been beautiful outside here in Louisiana. It was beautiful when I was in DC last week. And it's just good to have face-to-face meetings again,
Yes, it is. There's a lot of face-to-face meetings going on. You see, I heard the news, all the people from the vice president to speakers, all these people who apparently have contacted COVID, but have through their proper getting all their shots and everything, and none of them have really had any symptoms, pretty much symptom free. A lot of folks over the last couple of weeks. And they seem to be well. So I guess to me, that kind of tells me whatever routine that we're doing with these vaccines and everything else, it seems to be helping people. Because now people are getting COVID and they're just kind of walking right through it, which is what we expected them to do once we have any problem like that, a health problem like that under control, like the many ones we've been through. So it's a beautiful thing. I was out there, I was looking, Erin, I was saying to myself, the businesses seem to be doing a little bit better. I mean, I'm getting some hard metrics that are out there trying to get an idea how the companies are doing in Virginia and across the country. And just through my own anecdotes that I've been out there, anecdotal stories from people that I've talked to, people seem to be coming back a little bit at a time. Lots of opportunities are out there for companies to do federal contracting, to do state level contracting, and a lot of people who are doing obviously a lot of business in the private sector. but people have not given up. I mean, the numbers are astonishing. There's a lot of folks out there that have taken their the best of what they have and put it to work for them, and a lot of them are being very successful. So that's really good news. I was going to try to pull Erin into this conversation, but I kind of lost her for a minute. But that's okay. Let's go ahead and go on to the next bit of subject matter here. So, Virginia, voting in Virginia. Are we going to vote in Virginia? Yes or no? Coming up, there's elections that are coming up for the House elections, and there's elections that are coming up for the other areas as well. Specifically, excuse me, folks, I got a little distracted here, but we're on the live show. I can get a little distracted. I apologize. But we're still looking to see what's going to happen on the redistricting piece. We don't know whether or not from what I understand and from what I've been reading, whether or not there's going to be any ruling coming out of the courts as to whether or not Virginia is going to have additional elections as a result of the redistricting plans. We're still in a holding pattern for that to see what's going to happen. I know, but around the country, not just here in Virginia, there's been some very peculiar things that have happened with redistricting, with folks on the other side of the aisle, basically redistricting Democrats out of seats and states in Florida. I mean, Val Demings was, I think her seat went away, and also taking in other places, putting candidates in Texas who are running against each other, reducing one seat down to two seats down to one, or combining two districts where you now have candidates that have to run against each other. All these sort of things are forms of voter suppression that we're trying to get around and trying to get legislation passed to prevent these things from happening. But I tell folks just stay with us and stay on top of things, and we'll get by this too. But you got to kind of stay with it and do what you need to do. Every election is an important election, so everyone needs to get out there every election and vote. Make sure that you're registered. You want to do that early, and you want to do that often to check, to make sure. You don't want to show up on election day and find out something's wrong and you're either not registered or you're at the wrong particular place where you have to vote, and you end up either not being allowed to vote, or either you end up getting what's known as a provisional ballot. And those provisional ballots are counted, but they're not counted until later on at the end. So, but in a lot of cases, people just don't get to vote at all. So one of the main things that I want to continue to talk to folks about is making sure that they're getting out there and talking with their congressmen, and they're letting them know that they believe that voting rights are something that we need to continue to make sure that they're protected in this country, because voting rights are the foundation of our democracy. They are the air which gives the body of democracy life, and the foundation of what makes it all possible for us to get people elected who represent the things that we would like to have represented by our congresspeople, or either our state or local representatives as well. And I always try to give people sort of lessons a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about the foundation of where we're at as how we got to this point. And one of the things before I do that, I want to kind of maybe just go back a little bit and start over again. There's a couple different things that are going on. We've been able to have some successes. I'm changing horses here. We've been able to get a Supreme Court justice named into the court, Ketanji Jackson Brown, which is a fantastic, Brown Jackson, excuse me, I get her name mixed up. She's on the Supreme Court, which is a great thing. And we're also out there still trying to make sure that we get HR 4 and HR 1, those bills that have been passed in the House, which is HR 4, is the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. And that Voting Rights Advancement Act is really to replace the pre-clearance piece that was taken away in 2013, and it was gutted out of the 1965 Civil Rights Voting Act. So the 1965 Civil Rights Voting Act was very important. It was really part of a triad of legislation that happened in the 60s, which was the 1968 Fair Housing Act, and there was also the Civil Rights Act of 1964, along with the Voting Rights Act of 1965, kind of brought everything together that really kind of changed civil rights in this country as a whole. And those are the sort of things that we really want to be able to keep in place, things that have given rights to people that had not originally had gotten all their rights in this country. And what we're fighting to make sure that we keep as part of that jewel crown in this is voting rights, because in 2013 that was taken away, as I said. So once again, HR 4, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, pre-clearance was taken away. This puts pre-clearance back in. And you say, well, what does that mean? Well, I get up here every Wednesday and I try to talk to folks and let them know that the pre-clearance is extremely important. Any changes to anything that has to do with voting in any country, in any jurisdiction, has to have at least 180 days before any election, and it has to have pre-clearance from the Department of Justice. HR 4 was passed in the House of Representatives, and it went on to the Senate. So it's a very important thing really to have. The other thing that we talked about, and I remind people about, that came out of the House, was the HR 1 was the For the People Act of 2021. And the For the People Act of 2021 even opened up voting rights even more so to the American public. It expanded access to voting, and it gave automatic same-day voter registration, 2 weeks of early voting. Again, it restored the pre-clearance piece of the 1965 Voting Rights Act, which I told you, which was the jewel piece within that act, part of that 3 pieces of legislation that happened in the 60s. Fair housing in 1968, to remind you again, voting rights 1965, and civil rights in 1964, all extremely important pieces of legislation. So what we want to be able to do is to make sure that we are talking to our Congress people, and we're giving them a call and letting them know that this legislation has been passed out of the House of Representatives. And there's been legislation that has gone to the Senate. The Senate has come up with their bills. But more importantly, we tried to pass the Voting Rights Act. The voting rights legislation. It did not pass, but that doesn't mean that it won't get passed. What we have to continue to do as Americans is to support and call our Congress folks to let them know that we want to see these Voting Rights Act legislation passed so they can get to the president's desk and it can be signed. So we got work to do. We got to mobilize. We got to get the right people in office, get enough numbers, get this legislation passed, and get the voting rights back available to all Americans. And this is important. We need to get that done. So what I want to be able to do now, I lost my guest here. Live streams, anything might happen. I don't know. Erin, my co-host, may have lost her internet connection or anything. But you know what? We're going to go ahead. We've got a really great special guest, and we're going to start a little early. Usually we bring in our special guests as we run our mouths for about a half an hour and then introduce our guest. But Erin's gone, so I'm going to go ahead and introduce our special guest now. I'm not going to wait on that. I'm going to have the dessert before the dinner. We're going to get right into it. And right now, I want to tell you who we have. We've got a fantastic person who's a local Northern Virginia supervisor. And let me tell you a little bit about him. First, let's put him on screen. Okay, we're talking about Supervisor Rodney L. Lusk. He was sworn in as a Fairfax County Lee District Supervisor in January 2020. He's the first African-American male to hold that position. We've had an African American before him, but he's the first guy. He's the first brother we've had in that position for the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors. Happy to have him. He currently serves as the chairman of the Public Safety Committee. He's also vice chair to the Personnel and Registration Committee, and he's a member of the Audit Committee. He's on a lot of different committees, getting a lot of the stuff done. He's also a member of the Successful Children and Youth Policy Team, and the Secretary or Treasurer for the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments. So this gentleman is quite busy, but folks, I'm not done yet. He's done more. And he's done a lot of things that I didn't realize that he did till I started reading his brief bio. Prior to being elected as a Lee District Supervisor, Rodney served 32 years as a Fairfax County employee, which is quite a while in Fairfax County government, where he had roles delivering human services to the Historic Richmond Highway Corridor, serving also on the staff of 2 former Board of Supervisors. I'm going to have to ask him about that because I did not know that. And also, he's also the National Marketing Director for the Fairfax County Economic Development Authority. And as a small business caucus, we definitely want to talk to him a little bit about what he's done in that area and what he also intends to do more so in that area. And now that he's a supervisor out of Lee. Additionally, Rodney has served as a member of the Fairfax County Planning Commission and the Fairfax County Park Authority. Now, we're not quite done. Let me go to the other side. Supervisor Lusk's priorities while in office include opening a workforce development center on Route 1, reforming police policy. He's been addressing, and he wants to address affordable housing crisis and improve pedestrian and bicycle safety network. And he wants to implement a rapid transit project on the Richmond Highway. Supervisor Lusk has his hands full. He's done a whole lot of things. It looks like he's got a lot more he wants to get accomplished. But let me tell you a little more about it. He's also, in addition to his office, coordinated with the Fairfax County government agencies. And he's worked with local nonprofits in the lead districts to organize food distributions across in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And as a result, these guys got over 3 million pounds of food delivered. And, let me tell you, the best part of Supervisor Lusk is when you talk about the man himself. The man himself, Rodney Lusk, is a native Virginian, a Lee District resident for 22 years, and he's a graduate of the University of Virginia. I'm not going to hold it against him being a Hampton guy, but I got some good friends at UVA. But anyway, he's got a lovely wife, Jacqueline, and he's a proud parent of 2 daughters. Well, we've got that in common. I've got 2 daughters, Addison and Sheridan. Without further ado, folks, I want to go ahead and bring into our live stream our heroes, Supervisor Rodney Lusk. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, Mark. I appreciate that introduction. You got me laughing over here, so thank you for sharing that. You guys got all my bio. It looks like the full rundown on my.
We have the full Monty there. Everything about you. I did not know that you were working on the staff of 2 prior supervisors.
I did. I was lucky. So Kate Hanley, who you might know, Kate served as chair of the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors. Before she was chair, she was the Providence District Supervisor. So I worked with her. She brought me into the county, which is an amazing thing too. And as a result of her assistance, I ended up moving from working in her office to going over to work in human services. So I met Verdi Haywood, and Verdi's like, we've got some issues down the Richmond Highway Corridor we think you could help us with. And before I know it, I'm working doing direct service delivery. Then I moved into employment and training. And then I moved into the redesign effort for Richmond Highway. So it's crazy. I ended up working on a team for about 2 years. We created the CSP model that's still being used today. We created that model over 30 years ago. Yeah, it's just amazing. I mean, I've been really blessed in that. I worked in many different places in the county. After working with Human Services, Jerry Conley, who was a congressman, he was also the Providence District Supervisor. So Jerry calls me up and he's like, Rodney, I hear you've been working in Human Services. I think it might be helpful if you kind of come over and just chat with me for a little bit. So he had just won a special election in March of was it 1995, March of 1995, he won a special election. I go over, we're talking 45 minutes later. He's like, "You're hired." And I'm like, "Hired? Hired to do what?" And he goes, "Land use and zoning." And I literally was like sitting in the seat, and then I was like, "Land use and zoning? I don't know anything about land use and zoning." I was totally transparent with him. And he said something, I'll never forget. He said something like, "I have it on good authority that you're the right person for this job." And then he said something after. He goes, "We'll learn together." And I swear to goodness, he was right. I loved planning, land use, zoning.
Okay.
I learned all of that stuff working for him. We worked in Tyson's. Now think about this. Jerry and I helped create what is the Mosaic District today. He came in the office one day. He was like, "Rodney, I'm tired of looking at all these U-Haul trucks, that big, funny automotive center that has all these gargoyles hanging off the side of the building. We got to fix this place up," right? That's what he said to me. This is at Gallows and 29. So I'm like, "Jerry, all right, I'll get on it." So I called in the planning director. I called in the Greater Business Center for Merrifield, and we were talking about what we can do differently there. And the idea was that we would create a town center. And I say it took about 15 years from that point that Jerry and I had that conversation to the point where we were both walking up to the Angelica Theater at the same time. And it wasn't like we planned it. And just before we opened the door, he stopped and he goes, "Rodney, do you remember when we talked about making this into a town center?" I said, "Jerry, of course I remember. You and I had that conversation 15 plus years ago." And then he goes, "Is it all that you expected?" And I said, "Jerry, it's better. It's better than I expected." And then he goes, which was cool. He goes, "Remember, you had a hand in it." And then he opened the door and we went into the Mosaic Angelica Theater and got to watch a movie there. So it's awesome. So yeah, this journey has been an interesting one. I've just been really, fortunate to also work in economic development. I was there for 21 years, and you were kind of curious about what I did there. So I was the director of national marketing, and my job, which at the time I didn't realize, it's a pressure cooker job, because in essence, I was responsible for recruiting some of the largest companies in Fairfax County. So I worked with companies, Amazon Web Services. That's a company I helped recruit and bring into Fairfax County. I did the deal with Microsoft, Splunk, Appian, MicroStrategy. I can just go on and on. There's over 280 of these companies that I personally brought into the county. And then I also managed a team that had 13 people on it. So they were bringing in companies for the EDA as well. And then I had the fortune at the time, Dr. Gordon was my boss at the Economic Development Authority. He said, "I need an office in California. Can you open an office in California?" I was like, "Sure, I'll open an office in California." So I did the research. We opened an office first in Palo Alto, and we noticed that it wasn't getting the same level of traction as the work that we were doing in the southern part of the state. So I went back to Jerry. I said, "Jerry, I think we should have an office with a base in Southern California, and then we will travel up to Northern California, as opposed to having the base in Northern and traveling to Southern California." And that turned out to be one of the best decisions we made, because we ended up getting the Hilton hotels, we got SAIC's headquarters, and the list goes on and on. So it was a great opportunity. But what it also showed me, Mark, which is kind of important and something that I struggle with, is that we were supporting the growth and expansion of mostly the northern and the western parts of Fairfax County. So Tyson's, Herndon, Reston, that's where all the companies went. They were just like pushing themselves into those markets. And I would ask the CEOs, I'd ask the COOs, I'd ask the CTOs, "Will you consider opening an office on the Richmond Highway Corridor? Would you consider having that presence be there?" And repeatedly, to my chagrin, and it wasn't because I didn't try and then our office didn't try, they wanted to be where their customers were, where their suppliers were, where their competitors were. Since they're not in that area, that's not considered the technology kind of area. They wanted to be along the Dulles Corridor. So acknowledging this and also acknowledging that if I wanted to see something different, I had to get personally engaged. I had to step kind of out of my comfort zone. I had to run for this office. And one of the major issues that I ran on in 2019 was creating a center that would allow us to do both innovation, which is the recruitment of emerging tech companies, and then also skills and workforce development for the residents in this corridor who have, unfortunately, been passed over for some of these really important technology positions. So over the last 2.5 years, we've been diligently, doggedly pushing, and the center's under construction right now. It will open in June of 2022, this year. We will have 8,500 square feet of space inside of the new Lee District Community Center, which is, if you know where the Costco is on Richmond Highway, right behind the Costco is the Audubon Mobile Home Park. Inside that Audubon Mobile Home Park is the former Mount Vernon tennis and athletic facility. That facility the county now owns. That facility is going to become a community center and the Workforce Innovation Skills Hub, or the WISH Center is what I call it. Okay. So we're just so excited that we've got employers who've signed on, who will provide jobs, but we're also getting those employers to provide training. And we have, which you will appreciate, we have all of the building trades. So every single one of the building trades in the DC metro region, and there are 13 of them, they've all signed on. We will be a part of your center. We will provide pre-apprenticeship. We will provide apprenticeship training to anyone who you think would be interested. And if they can meet our requirements and get through our program, we'll pay them in their apprenticeship, and we will pay them a full-time wage with benefits. Salary will be at least $20 to $24 per hour. So this is going to be a game changer for so many people who I will say have been left behind. And for me personally, it's almost like coming full circle. Like, I worked in human services in the 1990s. I provided services to some of the residents on this corridor. And I know that the thing that has been the most limiting for them has been their income. We can solve so many problems for the residents who've been struggling by giving them the right opportunities, giving them the right skills, and getting them into the right employment. And that's the vision, and that's what we are going to be doggedly working on here over the next few years.
Well, let me ask you a couple of small business questions.
Sure. Shoot.
I think the things that you talked about there are fantastic. That's happening down the Richmond Route 1 corridor. Right. But the investment and the amount that resources that the county can put into more small businesses providing services and products, not just on the corridor, but around Fairfax County for service for both services and products. Are you? I guess my question is, I believe the county can invest more in small businesses, giving them more opportunities. In particular, businesses have been looked over, have not gotten really, I think their adequate share of opportunities in the county for the tax money that's spent. Well, let's just start with the African-American community. About 10, 12% of the county?
About 10, yep.
Do they have 10% of the contracts? That's small businesses. Have we ever gotten anywhere near there? Or are we trying to get to that? Are we trying to get more of those small businesses either started in the county, either providing services and products, or do we want it for some of the technology firms and other ones? I always ask them, all of our folks who come on, a question of how can we get more into small business? Because really the big boys tend to run away with a whole lot. They will take the air out of the room. I don't think they necessarily mean it. They're just big.
Well, there's a limited amount of oxygen in some rooms, so you might be right about that. They might be taking all the oxygen. So that's not a good thing for those who might need some as well. So to your point, let me say a couple things. So the pandemic obviously showed us how detrimental the effects have been on our Latin community and our African American community, as it relates to job losses, as it relates to, even the vaccinations in the earlier days, not being able to get the vaccines, and let's be honest, being subject to getting sick and also dying as a result.
Right.
So when we began to look at some of the issues that were being caused by the pandemic, I argued very early on, as a board member, that we need to do more for our small, minority, women-owned, and veteran-owned firms. I basically had a serious grouping for those small, minority, women, and veteran-owned companies, and said that if we're going to do something significant to help those companies, we need to put money in those companies. So we took part of our ARPA money, so the money that we got in stimulus from the federal government, and we put it into a fund called the Pivot Fund. So the Pivot Fund was to support basically any small business. But then I asked specifically about the small, minority, women, and veteran-owned, and I said we should have a target. And the county's never, ever had a target for a number for small, minority, women-owned, and veteran-owned firms. And I said we should have at least a third of the money be available to those companies.
Well, let me
hold
stop.
on.
Finish.
Yeah, hold on. Let me just finish, because this is kind of important. This is something the county had said we do not have those types of targets. I pushed the county attorney to look at it. She looked at it. She came back and said, well, this is federal money, and this program, it's a little different. So we have the opportunity to earmark and designate it. So we did that designation. Then I said, we need to market. We're going to market this program to as many of the different minority, veteran, women, and other entities as possible. Through the effort, it turned out that more than 60% of the money, at the end of the day, ended up going to those companies. And that is a positive, because the total dollar value of that pivot program was over $52.5 million. Just think about that for a second. That's a significant investment. So I'm proud the board was able to earmark the funds for that, and I'm delighted that I was able to help craft a way for it to go to those companies that were the most deserving. Like you said, the oxygen's being sucked out of the room for these companies that were getting those federal PPP loans. Those PPP loans were going to big companies, no small, not many minority, not many women. So it was clear that we needed to do something different. I've also been asking.
And that's a good thing too. You deserve recognition for that effort, and I want to recognize you for that. That's a good thing.
Sure. No, that's fine. I mean, I'm not saying it for the recognition. I guess you gotta understand my orientation. I was a Fairfax County employee now 32 years. So for me, I'm in this job to help solve problems. People look at me and they say I'm a politician, and I say, no, I'm a public servant. I see a problem and I want to go try to solve that problem. This isn't about like getting the recognition. I don't need people patting me on the back. I've been around long enough, and I've seen people like Jerry Conley and Kate Hanley, and I've learned that you got to get stuff done. This isn't a seat you occupy just for fun. I didn't give up a job that I absolutely loved at the Economic Development Authority to come here and just basically be, warming up a chair. I'm going to be activist, and you'll see that. You'll see the things that I'm working on, because I care deeply about them. I care about the community, and I want to do what I think is going to be also mirroring the legacy of my grandparents. My grandparents taught me so many important values and lessons, and they taught me that you have to help people when you see that they're in need. If you see someone struggling, you have a responsibility to do something. So I can't just sit back and say someone else is going to fix that. I need to do it. And that's why you said earlier, 3 million pounds of food. That 3 million pounds of food didn't just come from me. I went out and found private sector donations. I found public sector donations. I found not-for-profits. I found churches to partner with. I found all these different organizations. And at the end of the day, it was a huge undertaking. I mean, if you had asked me when I first started on it that it was going to result in 3 million pounds of food being delivered, I would have been like, oh, there's no way. I mean, how am I going to get 3 million pounds of food? People are starving and I know it. So I can't just sit back and not do anything. And I can't wait for someone else to solve that problem. So I got to get engaged and I got to do my part. So.
Well, I definitely think that you're out there doing good stuff, Supervisor. But, you know, one of the things I think that the county can be additionally progressive is really looking at, well, if we're trying to do some reach some goals that we haven't reached before, maybe we can do things a little bit differently. And one of the things that when it comes to the various different constituencies in small business, whether you talk veteran-owned, women-owned, Latino-owned, African-American-owned, I like the idea, and I think it's a good idea to have minimum goals that they're trying to reach to make sure, and when they're having those acquisition contracts, if there's some sort of legislation that says it's not optional, you need to make sure that you have the participation of these companies. But not only that as subs, but one of the other things that's a great thing is you're saying, well, if we're sort of quarantining, for lack of a better term, a certain amount of budget for these companies in their different areas, say what that number is and say, hey, we're trying to make sure we hit these goals. Is that something you would be interested in getting behind at all in the county?
Yeah, the thing is, and I have to be clear here, and it's not like I don't want to get behind it because I've already been pushing on it, as you can tell. I made that point earlier. There is something called Dillon Rule, where Dillon Rule states, so you have to get permission from the Commonwealth in order to take any actions, even as a locality. So the state level now, you don't have set-asides. We don't have set-asides in Virginia. You can't do that. And that's part of the problem, right? Because the state doesn't allow the localities to do that. However, I mean, there are other ways that you can maybe look at this. So one of the things that I'm advancing, which I've started since I became a supervisor, because I look at all the tools that I have. So for example, Amazon came to me and said they want to build a data center in my district, a 240,000 square foot data center. But the place that they want to build the data center on it has 2 office buildings on it today, 100,000 square feet each, so 200,000 square feet of office, built like 7 years ago and just vacant. And will probably continue to be vacant because the BRAC uses that we thought were going to come, they just haven't come. And you look at the office market now, it's a lot softer. It's like retail. No one knows exactly where it's going. So I said to the folks at Amazon, I'd be happy to talk with you about providing that option for you to build that data center. But I need 2 things from you. I'm just going to ask you for 2 things. And I said, what are those? And I said, I need a proffer commitment. I need this in a proffer that you will let me know when your general contractor is defined for this 240,000 square foot data center. I want to know what trades, building trades, are going to be needed to build a data center. What certifications will those tradesmen need to have? And then any, other credentials or security requirements that would be connected to their employment. And I want you to let me know that at the point you name the contractor so that I can see if some of the folks that we will be training in our center on Richmond Highway, which will be focused on the building trades, as I mentioned earlier. So we've got this agreement with all the different building trades. So the people who live on Richmond Highway can help build that data center.
Well,
so
I think that's a great idea. Don't want to interrupt you. Go ahead and finish. I think you got another part you want to say there.
Yeah, and the last point I'll make was number 2 is that you're going to, build this 240,000 square foot building. It's going to have a need for people to operate and manage that data center. So you're going to have about 50 to 60 people who will be employed on a 24-hour schedule. Second question, I need you to let me know what certifications, what training, what background do those folks need to have before you hire them, so I can know what training program we can put together at the center to get those folks ready for employment at that data center. So they first said they couldn't do it. They said they'd never done it. They said that their attorneys told them no. They came back to me. I said, I still need the proffer. This was like on a Friday. I said, if you don't agree to the proffer, we'll need to continue your case, which means I'd be deferring their case because we need to talk about this and get it resolved. This is okay. We'll call you back on Monday. The hearing's on Tuesday. Call me back on Monday. The attorney said, no, we can't do it. And I says, okay, I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm not trying to, be onerous. What I'm asking you for is not a guarantee for employment for any of the residents in Lee. I'm asking you to guarantee them an opportunity. Can you do that? Can we have the opportunity for our residents to know what the requirements are, what skills they need to have, what certifications they need to have to compete for these jobs? These jobs are coming to this community. These residents are going to be impacted by this new data center. Why not let them also be a part of help building it and help running it? So they paused and they said, okay, we'll send you something in an hour. Can you take a look at it? If it's suitable, will you then move our case? I says, if it meets the requirements that I've set out, you can send it to me. I'll look at it and I'll give you an answer. They sent it to me. They agreed to the 2 terms and I moved their case on Tuesday. And now we have language that shows that that can be done. And in the history of Amazon, that was never done. So I think it's just a different way of approaching the work. I mean, I think you have to be consistent and you have to be fair. I mean, I don't think I was asking for anything that was like out of bounds. I wasn't saying I want you to give every person in my community a job. That's not what I said. So I think we had grounds to stand on too, and that was the reason why they eventually came around. Well,
I understand you hold a certain position as a supervisor. You have to be a certain way, but one of the things that I've known historically that are true, I worked for Lockheed Martin for almost 20 years. When I started to work for them back in 1995.
How funny. Yeah. Sounds familiar. I worked for Jerry in 1995.
That whole year. Listen, they were not at that time, the federal government, this is just the story, for somehow we're not hiring enough people from various communities, the African-American community, enough women, other people. All of a sudden, the government comes out and they tell them, listen, you want to hold on to these contracts, then you've got to follow the EEOC requirements. You need to go find these people and hire them. They had always said that they couldn't find them, but suddenly when they were saying, well, maybe we're going to look to do business elsewhere, guess what happened? They found the people, they found the qualified people, they hired them. Similar to what you're talking about. And if I move it up a little bit further and we talk about things on the federal basis, I know you're a local guy, you talk about Alaska Native corporations and the ANC contracts. If you go back with the ANC contracts, you basically have the Alaska Native corporations getting sole source $500 million contracts. That happened. That legislation passed. So, and they can have multiple 8As. Other communities can only have one 8A and last for 10 years. So when people tell me things can't get done, that's not true. They find a way to get it done, and they actually legislate to get it done. So I commend you, and not though I know you're not looking for those sort of attaboys, but I think the work that you're doing, Supervisor Lusk, is fantastic. I'd like to see you do more of that.
Well, I commit to you this, that I'm going to do everything I can in my power, and I've told the residents in Audubon, and if you think about this for a second. I represent communities that are the most disadvantaged in this county. So we're talking about folks who live in mobile homes. 700 of those mobile home units are in one development in my district. I have another mobile home park that's like maybe 300 yards away that has another like 91 mobile homes in it. And at one point, I think almost 50% of the residents in those 2 mobile home parks were out of work, and almost at the exact same time, because once the pandemic hit and they sent home all the people who were in hospitality and restaurants, it was just like mass, layoffs essentially. And they don't get to work from home. You can't hop on a computer and be a hotel worker. You can't hop on a computer and be a restaurant worker. I mean, let's think about this. You can't do any of that stuff. But here we are. I mean, and I'm a beneficiary of this, right? I get on my computer right now. I can talk to you. I can talk to anybody, right?
Absolutely.
So we've got to help these residents get into the 21st century in some respects, and to be able to leverage employment opportunities that they would have never even thought about. Ones that I'll give you one more example. So sorry, I can go on. So you can tell me to be quiet.
Go ahead. This is fantastic. We got
so this is the deal. One of the partners that we have in the center is Dominion Energy. Dominion Energy. So Dominion is talking about how they want to work very closely with our center, and we said we want to be a partner. And we started talking about how that partnership might work. So they have a need for people that do what they call line maintenance. So the people who work on the power lines, the people who work on the natural gas lines, they have a skilled trade for that. They train you how to kind of work on the power line, because you can't just get up there in the bucket truck and start messing around, with all that voltage, because it can kill you. It'll light you up, literally light you up. So you got to have some skill with that. But if you can work on a power line or a natural gas line, you can make $100,000 a year. I don't think people even know this. Like, this is insane. You don't have to go to college. You don't have to have any debt. You will be in the upper middle class almost instantaneously. And we're talking about people who have been in the lower class from the point that they were born. So this is the vision. We're going to get people into these positions. Second, I'm talking to Dominion, and they said, Rodney, we're getting ready to start building some wind and hydro turbines, which are these little turbines you put in the water, like along Virginia Beach. They're going to build 183. It's kind of like a pilot. Yeah. But they basically said to me, we have a vision that we're going to have thousands of these things up and down the eastern seaboard. Right. So we're going to have to hire thousands and thousands of people to help us maintain those. Like, it's not like something that anybody can do. You'll be trained to do it. They said to me, we'll be happy to provide training in your center. Anyone that wants to learn how to do this, we'll hire them if they'd like to be hired by us. And then they said, we'll do one better. If they want to start their own company and they want to have a contract with us, here you go. There you go. Start your own company, get your LLC, and now you're an entrepreneur, and you have a contract with Dominion, and Dominion hires you to go maintain their wind and hydro turbines. So this is very, very fascinating. There's going to be some real opportunities here.
Those are real opportunities, and they're middle-class opportunities that built this country along with unions to get people good, solid, middle-class, upper middle-class jobs that are open to everybody. And if you want to take it a step further and open up your own LLC or throw out your shingle, you can do that too if that's where your heart desires. And as long as the opportunities are open. I always like telling people the story about the Hartsville Jackson Airport down in Atlanta. And people don't know this guy named Maynard Jackson, and the story goes quick. The former mayor of Atlanta is they said he wanted to build this international airport that we all go to now. And they were saying, but all these companies that were there, he said, but you've got to hire some of my folks here, in Atlanta, in the surrounding areas. And they kept saying, well, we can't find any engineering or aeronautical companies. We can't find any technical companies. He says, well, hold on a minute. Give me a couple of days and I'm going to get back to you. So the story goes is he comes back later and he says, isn't that just like a big parking lot with all these paved roads and places for airplanes to land and take off? He said, well, yeah. He said, well, we got people who can maintain roads and pave and build. We can do that. We can start there. And the rest of it, of course, is history. But that's the reason how he was able to even get smaller business who may not have been in on more of the higher technical places, but eventually got into part of the business, and they found other businesses as they went along. Where there's a will, there's a way.
Yes. Mm-hmm. No. And I'll say this.
What you're talking about.
That's exactly. I was going to say he and I are symbiotic, and I didn't know that specific story. I did know he was the mayor, and I knew his name is on the airport, so that says something too. There's a reason why his name is up there. It's not just up there just for fun, right?
Exactly.
So, but no, that's awesome. That's great, and that's what we have to do. We have to be intentional in thinking about communities that have not been a part of the prosperity, and I think it's going to be in everyone's interest. This is not like a zero-sum game. Like we're taking something from one group and some other group is losing out. We're trying to lift the boat and really lift the boat for everyone. Everyone gets to rise together.
Exactly.
And to me, and this is what I think is just something that I hope people really give some thought to. No one wants to be poor. People don't wake up in the morning and go, "Oh man, I like being on public assistance. This is great. This is the best thing that ever happened to me. Oh gosh." That is not the case. And I think the hard thing is they just don't have a sense of what opportunities are there. It's almost like you're in this like space. This is the aperture that you see. And what we have to do is expand that aperture as far and as wide as we can and give people those opportunities. And I think we're all going to benefit when that happens. And the last thing I'll make the point of is that generationally, this is going to change the lives of many people for years and years into the future. And
it is. Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, one thing I want to ask you, which I ask for everyone who comes on to the show, and I think I have a feeling what your answer might be to this. If you were king for a day, you could wave your, people would do whatever you want. You could wave your magic wand. What would be the one thing that you would do first?
If I could wave my magic wand, certainly would want to end suffering. If I could end all suffering, and that encompasses so many things. Just think about it. Financial, emotional. I mean, there are people in this country, in this county, in this world, we have no idea of the difficulties that they're going through. And, for us to maybe think beyond ourselves. I mean, I think a lot of things that I see in this country that is somewhat disturbing is that people are just focused on themselves. It's almost like if I'm not benefiting, then no one else should, right? It's this sense that you've got to get, you got to get all the oxygen out of the room and take it with you. And who cares about whoever is left and they can't get any? And that's wrong. That is so wrong. So, I think if we could end suffering and pain, we'd be a much happier place. And that includes food insecurity, that includes health insecurity, that includes financial insecurity, mental health security. I mean, I can go on. So yeah, you give me that wand, I'm gonna go and circle around and go after a bunch of things, mister.
I had a feeling that was going to be your answer, something like that. Well, I'll tell you one thing. Everybody probably knows how to get their supervisor, but I'm still going to ask you the question. Social media handles, people want to get in contact with Supervisor Lusk. How do they do it?
Yeah, well, you can reach me. I'll give you an old school phone numbers. Some people still do that. 703-971-6262. My office, I'm located over at the Franconia Government Center right off of Franconia Road. So that's where the police station is and the government center. And then I say our email address is leedist@fairfaxcounty.gov, LEEDIST@fairfaxcounty.gov, and at Supervisor Lusk. I mean, I've got a couple of Twitter and Facebook, but they're mostly at Supervisor Lusk. So feel free to call, stop in. You can write, you can write too. I take letters. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's fantastic, Supervisor Lusk. Sure. I really do like the things that I hear you talking about. It was really a pleasure being able to talk with you. And if the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus can do anything to support you or me personally, Mark Kennedy, please reach out to us, because I really like what you're doing, and we're gonna follow what you're doing and hopefully have you back at another time. Try to keep on the thing. Now we're going to go ahead and end with we always like to end with a little bit of Bob. Thank you for coming on the Small Business Caucus Show live. And Supervisor Lusk, we're going to have you back next time. We just want to say goodbye to you and welcome back. When you come back, we're going to have you back this year. Okay?
I look forward to it. Thank you, man.
Okay, take care, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
The broadcast is almost ending.